Thank you all very much. We'll start with 5-minute rounds of questions, and I will begin. So back in 1990, Congress authorized something called the Human Genome Project, which was designed to map the human genome, which gave rise to an incredible amount of information about the human genome, which is what makes us who we are. And it has had enormous positive benefits in terms of law enforcement, for example, being able to use DNA as an essential part of regular criminal investigations to identify an assailant. For example, in a forensic analysis of a rape kit, it can identify with virtual certainty the perpetrator of the crime. But at the time, it was also recognized that there could be a tremendous abuse of that information. And indeed, we've touched on some of those. For example, discriminating against people based on their genetic profile for insurance purposes. For example, if you apply for life insurance or something of the nature, and someone had access to your genetic profile, they could basically deny you because of perhaps some indication, some evidence of a genetic defect that would lead you to contract a disease or the like. And then, of course, employment, where there could be discrimination by employers against people based on their genetic profile. So all of this is something we have anticipated to some extent, but I don't think we have been able to predict the extent to which this genetic profile, this genome data can be subject to not only beneficial use, but also use by our adversaries and for improper purposes. Mr. Savage, who did 23andMe do the actual testing of the saliva samples that were submitted by the people who engaged your company and your product?
We contract with LabCorp, which is an American-based testing company here, to do the testing of the DNA samples for 23andMe.
For all of it?
For all of our testing, yes.
And to your knowledge, is LabCorp, are there efforts to attack or to basically do cyber attacks on the database that LabCorp maintained of 23andMe genetic samples and data?
I am not aware of any particular cyber attacks on LabCorp. However,
well, you're not saying that LabCorp was somehow immune from cyber intrusions or cyber attacks, right?
No, I'm not, Senator.
So can you tell us, as you sit here today, whether any of the genetic material that LabCorp tested that was collected by any of our adversaries or by criminal organizations, can you tell us with certainty that all of it was protected?
To the best of my knowledge, that data has been protected by LabCorp, and there has not been any breaches at LabCorp which has affected our data.
Professor Cohen, there's, generally speaking, if there is genetic information supplied along the same lines as 23andMe, what's to protect individuals from outsourcing of some of that testing to, let's say, labs in China?
I don't think there's much, Senator.
And Professor Klein, you said this is a national security vulnerability. Why is that? Why would China, the Chinese Communist Party, want the genetic information on Americans?
Well, there are several potential uses, none of which are good. One is to use genetic information as a means of tracking and identifying people, something that every intelligence service and law enforcement
And that could include the active duty military?
Active duty military, intelligence officers working for the United States, Chinese dissidents who are living here and have come here to enjoy freedom and freedom of speech, but whom the CCP is tracking. But then looking forward into the age of AI, having large data sets with genetically diverse populations represented in them is very attractive for training specialized AI models. We know we're in a fierce competition with them, and we need to keep these advantages for American companies and for the U.S. government.
And would each of you agree with me that the genetic information that's collected through one of these saliva samples by a company like 23andMe doesn't just tell you something about the person who provides that saliva sample? It tells you something about their parents, about their children, and about their grandchildren, and anybody who might be a genetic relative of that individual.
That's right, Senator. When we say 15 million, that's kind of an underestimate when you think about all of these generations of people who are affected.
Senator Durbin.
So it seems to me that 23andMe